The Sforza monument represents one of the most audacious artistic and technological challenges of the Renaissance. No one had ever before attempted to make a statue of this size in a single casting. Since the horse alone was to be 24 feet high, over 70 tons of bronze were needed for the casting. The highly complex nature of this project led Leonardo to rediscover the method of indirect casting, in which the negatives prepared for the construction of the casting core can be reused as outer mold as well. Of this daring challenge, in which Leonardo was engaged from 1482 to 1499, there remain numerous drawings and notes in his codices. Starting from these documents, it has been possible to reconstruct the molding and casting process devised by Leonardo through digital animation techniques. The first step in the process of constructing the casting mold consists of making a cast of the model. On the surface of the model, nails are used to mark the ideal lines that serve as reference for cutting into pieces the clay applied to make the cast, thus allowing the pieces to be detached. After having been suitably shaped and reinforced, the pieces are put back together again to form the negative of the horse's body divided into two halves. Inside the two halves, mounted on a special framework, is applied a layer of potter's earth having the same thickness as the statue, so as to reduce the volume of the cast. Subsequently, the layers of clay most external to the casting core are applied. The ribs that make up the internal reinforcement are applied. The two halves are closed and fastened by specially designed crosspieces and bolts. The core is thickened still further from the inside and is left hollow at this stage to facilitate transport. The two halves are then opened again and are rotated until the supports of the framework rest on the ground, freeing the casting core. The core for the head is made solidly inside the mold, suitably reduced in thickness with wax. The molds for the legs, which are made of solid bronze, are assembled without cores. Contemporaneously with the molding operations, the work site is prepared. The casting pit is dug and a supporting structure in masonry is built inside it. In the furnaces, placed around the edge of the pit, preparation of the bronze begins. The clay and wax is removed from the molds, after which they are transported along with the core to the smelting system on trolleys actuated by powerful winches. The first half section is lowered into the pit by means of a machine driven by a winch. To keep the machine from capsizing as the half section is turned over, it is anchored to the ground by cables. With a hoisting bridge, the core bearing the bronze shims required for correct centering is placed inside the first half section. The mold of the body is closed by lowering the second half section into the pit. While the reinforcement operations begin, the molds of the legs and the head are also assembled. The closure and interment of the mold requires perfect organization. Some workers are assigned to filling the core, others to positioning the casting ducts, vents, and pyrotechnic sensors. Still others, after having covered the entire mold with a layer of plaster, begin to fill in the pit. Meantime, on the surface, the ironsmiths fire the furnaces to the required temperature and sample the bronze to verify the homogeneity of the alloy. Once the pit has been entirely filled and packed down, the channels through which the bronze flows from the furnace mouths into the mold are positioned. Everything is now ready to carry out the casting procedure. The stoker opens the first furnace and the molten bronze begins to fill the mold. The furnaces are opened according to a determined sequence, controlled by pyrotechnic sensors, which fire as the molten bronze reaches them, sending out the signal to open the next furnace. After cooling, the statue is freed of the mold and extracted from the pit. Unfortunately, Leonardo was never able to put to the test the casting method he had devised. In 1494, when Italy was invaded by French troops, Ludovico il Moro decided to utilize the bronze destined to the monument to produce artillery. After a long waiting period, Leonardo's project was definitively abandoned in September 1499. When the troops of Louis XII occupied Milan, putting an end to the Sforza duchy. The clay Colossus, admired for years by the Milanese, was destroyed by arrows shot from the crossbows of the French soldiers who used it for target practice.